Ladies and gentlemen, from Killers of the Flower Moon, as William Hale, Robert De Niro. As Molly Burkhart, Lily Gladstone. As Ernest Burkhart, Leonardo DiCaprio. All right. Lily, I'd love to start with you in terms of, I always like to find out how you come to a role. How does it come to you? Was there an audition process? Was it a series of conversations? And then the moment you found out you got the role of Molly, what was that like for you, and what did it mean to you?
I mean, from front to back, the whole process was 1.5 years because COVID shut things down for a bit. There was a major script rewrite. So initially it was a meeting with Ellen Lewis letting me know that interest was high, but they were going to do a locals Osage casting first, which gave me tremendous faith in the film that that step was being taken. I was found as a local actor in Montana, so that meant a lot to me actually to hear. That process happened. I was brought into the room. Didn't feel great about my read, honestly. I had kind of a hard time with the scene as it was written, and come to find it was maybe the one major scene of when you get to meet Molly and Ernest and what their marriage would have been in that version. COVID happens. I don't hear anything for 8-9 months. I'm like, keep telling my friends who keep like insisting that like, no, they're gonna call. Like, no, they're not gonna call. And then I was, biding my time. The pace of my career has gone one great indie a year or one every 2 years, which, you need to find seasonal work in between. So I was registering for a data analytics course while I was pulling it up on Shoreline Community College's website and had my little debit card out and started getting ready to punch it in, then Skype, or not Skype. We're not in that age anymore, sorry. I'm such a... I get a notification that Marty is requesting a Zoom. I'm just like, put that credit card back in my wallet. Marty and I read the scene about a week later, and suddenly it's sides that I can perform. It's like, wow, this is really, I can take pauses. I can marinate in this a little bit. It felt like the Molly that I'd read in the book, and it felt like something that I was able to access. Did a reading with Marty and Ellen. Another week after that, had another request for another Zoom, but this time with Leo and Marty. And that was, the whole time I had the sides next to me, kept anticipating we would read, but we just talked for like 2 hours. And you were doing Don't Look Up at the time, and like when we signed off after talking, I think it was over 2 hours. You said, okay, I'll have a break in my schedule in the next like 2 or 3 weeks. We'll come back and do a chem read, because it went well. And then it's getting kind of closer to that time. I'm thinking, okay, 2-3 weeks from now, okay, that's December 8th, so it's probably going to be like sometime after that. And then I get a call from both my reps at the same time, which actors know that's a big deal, on December 1st. I'm like, oh, time to schedule the chem read. And they're like, you got it. It's like, wait, no. There's like, no, you have it. So I screamed through my phone, saw threw it toward my dad's Barca Lounger. I was at home with my parents in the living room. and noticed a picture of my great-grandma Lily on the mantle, like kind of watching me through the process, who would have been born 10 years after Molly. And I'm like, oh, Grandma. And then for a second I was like, wait, it's December 1st. I'd been doing a lot of research at that time, December 1st. Nobody designed it this way, it just happened. Maybe one person designed it this way, was Molly Burkhart's birthday.
Oh, wow. Leo, you know, you're also an executive producer on this film. What was it that you read or you watched or conversation that you had where it clicked for you and you said, this is a project that I want to devote my whole self to?
As soon as I read the book, it was a lost chapter of American history, you know, a horrific time period in Oklahoma. It was, you know, right at the Reign of Terror started the same year as the Tulsa Massacre, the exact same year. So here you had Oklahoma, which was this real hotbed of places that most indigenous tribes were pushed onto, and you had freed slaves, and then you had the Oklahoma land rush, and you had this massive population of white people reclaiming and taking that land right back again. So 1921 was also, I think, the height of the KKK in America, and Oklahoma was a hotbed for that. And here you have, you know, the onset of what was not then the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the beginnings of the FBI, and Native American lands were attributed as part of their jurisdiction. So we have this lost chapter of American. It was one of the most fascinating American stories I'd never heard. Much like, you know, most people hadn't heard about the Tulsa Massacre, and we kind of felt this incredible responsibility immediately to tell this story correctly. That, of course, led to, you know, writing a great script. And we had an initial screenplay where I was going to play Tom White. We kind of threw that out. We felt that didn't get to the heart of the story. It didn't get into the story of the Osage, frankly. It was, as Marty talked about it was an investigation story. It was a whodunit, and he kind of wasn't interested in doing that. And there was this small little section with Ernest and Molly, and we had the read-through, and we were like, oh my God, this is the emotion of the story. This gets us into the household, and here's this very twisted, bizarre, sadistic relationship between this white man and this Osage woman, and this kind of encompasses the story much better. So he went off to do The Irishman, and we kind of said no to that other script. We told the studio we're not doing it. They said, okay, we're not sure we want to go forth with it. Then we got a new studio, we did a new script. So it was like a 5-6 year process of getting this story correct.
Wow. Bob, 11th collaboration. 10th collaboration with Martin Scorsese. Did you ever think that, you know, firstly, 10, does that surprise you?
No, well, looking back on it in some ways, of course, it's all a surprise. But no, I was happy. I said, oh, hopefully we'll get to our 10th project together. And maybe, hopefully we'll do a few more.
At what point did you come to the project, and what was it that maybe you read or watched or spoke about that drew you in?
Well, I was told about it, and then Marty was doing it, and I read the book, and then Marty and Leo were doing it, and then I had committed to it before I even shot The Irishman. I said, I'm in, I'll do it. However, I didn't know, I read the book. I didn't know but to the Hale character. So that's where it was with me. And then they started telling me that we're going to change it. We have another idea. And I thought that sounds really good too, you know. I knew whatever it would be with Marty and Leo, they'd come up with something very special.
Yeah. And it is very special. You know, Leo, I watched this film again over the weekend, and the first time I watched it, I loved your performance, and I was like, I want to watch it again, and I want to see why did I love it so much. And I think I loved it because of the versatility that's in it. this is a complicated man. He doesn't just go from bad to good or good to bad or bad to good to bad. You know, he loves his wife, he loves his family, but he also has this commitment to his uncle and who's into evil things. And, you know, on the outset, he seems like a simple man, but you bring so much complexity to him. And just talk about finding that complexity in Ernest.
Thank you. I said this the other day, but he's kind of like an unreliable protagonist. You know what I mean? He doesn't even trust himself, and you can't trust him to make the right decision. He's not a hero by any stretch of the imagination. But in the research very early on, I was struggling with. I read a lot of his testimony and his handwritten letters, and by the sheer actions of how easily he was manipulated by Hale, I started to think of him almost like a sort of Lenny of Mice and Men type of character. I'm like, how slow could this guy possibly be? And even when he's writing Molly, I mean, he can't form a sentence. He's so easily swayed from his lawyer's team back to the devotion that he's supposed to have to his wife and his family, and he's just this manipulated individual. And so I was struggling with how far to push that. But I realized that, there's obviously something incredibly conscious about what he was doing. He was playing both sides of the fence, and he was doing one of the most horrific things I could ever imagine a character doing to the person that, he allegedly loved. And, there's, we could talk about what love means, but, every person and every relative, and even people from the Osage community that I spoke to, they insisted that this was a real love story, that there was a connection between these two people. They continued to see each other even afterwards, even after the trial. But they had this bizarre dynamic, which was unlike anything I'd ever seen in cinema history. So when we were developing the script, I said, when has this been done before? And I got to go see a lot of Montgomery Clift's work in A Place in the Sun. I was like, wow, this narrative has been done before. The corrosion of the American dream, the lust for wealth, and what you will sacrifice and the depths you will go to in order to achieve that. That became very inspiring. Then we got to see Montgomery Clift in The Heiress, and that helped with the narrative of our relationship as well. And then Red River with John Wayne to talk about the dynamic between Hale and Ernest. So all that helped feed us into trying to tell this story and what this character ultimately was.
Lily, talk about finding Molly. I know you come from Blackfeet heritage. How did you kind of tap into your own experiences in terms of inhabiting her and discovering who Molly was?
I think what I brought most from home was just protocol of how to be in approaching people about our stories. Because, Indian country, it's interesting, as a Native actor, a lot of us have to speak for a character languages that linguists have deemed dead languages. Stories like this are an act of language vitalization, so I don't like that term personally. But, we're an incredibly diverse group of people. There's 574 federally recognized tribes in the United States, and another several hundred that are not. There's linguistic bases here, just like there are, Latin languages, Germanic languages. And the difference between Blackfoot, which I speak very little of, I can introduce myself, I can count to 10, I know some animals, I know the bad words. But in any case, it gave me like a process, but it's a very different syllabic system, it's a very different phonetic system. And Blackfeet and Osage, it's like difference between like German and Mandarin, So it was a lot of finding Molly came from the language and really came from being in community. I referenced that photo of my great-grandma Lily on the wall, and I knew I had to approach Molly the same way I would expect an actress to approach my grandma, with the same love and care and attention and the same engagement that my family would expect to see from her, whoever she would be. It's like, okay, that's what I'm tasked with. Molly was a real person, and this history is an open wound for this community that I'm not a part of, become a part of in really beautiful, wonderful ways. But I think just being back home, knowing when you visit elders, you bring a gift, because they're giving you your time and they're giving you knowledge, so you bring something. Knowing how to sit and be patient and listen to people talk through these stories and not be like fact-finding, but be absorbing, like, because people share what they want to share with you. So I know how to sit with people and listen to experience, and all of that came from where I grew up. My understanding of Molly as this woman who, a lot of, I'd written a screenplay my senior year of high school about how my great-grandma Lily met my great-grandpa Alec. And there were some similar dynamics in that marriage that were very easy to draw on between Ernest and Molly. Alec was an Indian cowboy, but he was like a very lively one, a fun-loving guy. And Grandma Lily wanted to be a nun. She didn't want to get married, She wanted to be a nun so she could be a teacher. Got married off when she was 16, but anyways, the commonality was Grandma Lily was, when she moved her family to Seattle, she was like the woman all the Blackfeet, all the Seattle Blackfeet people would go visit because they said it felt good to sit and talk Blackfoot because she spoke fluently. Also a devout Catholic, was at Sunday services every weekend. When she wanted a parking spot, she'd pull out her rosary, and my dad would be circling the block, and then sure enough, they'd always get a parking spot. So those things, relationship to culture, language, family, faith, were all very similar to Molly, and just given the fact that they were born within 10 years of each other. So that had a lot to do with, all of that lent to each other. And then beyond that, it was just bringing the way that my nation's protocol raised me to be around people, bringing that into another community that was hosting me, and just listening as best as I could.
Bob, when I look at some of the characters you've played from Martin Scorsese over the years, men that are intimidating, men that are violent, play by their own rules, William Hale, he kind of comes at you with a smile the whole time, and yet I think he's the most sinister character you've ever played for Mr. Scorsese. Talk about finding that sinister side and delivering it with a smile the whole film, and who was this guy?
Well, I don't understand him. I understand certain things, he felt he was, I guess, above them. He felt part of the Osage community, but at the same time, he learned the language. He also had no problem doing what he did with Lily's character and how he manipulated Leo's character. That was like a given, It was in one of the characters, I'm forgetting who says, "Oh, it's an Indian." It says, "Oh, that's okay. You want him to kill him." Who was it? The Texan, the great, what's his name? Oh yeah, then it's okay. It's a different attitude toward people who are considered in some ways not people or not your equal, to say the least, but below you, and they can, if it comes to that, to have to get the head rights and all that, and that they would kill them in this kind of more insidious way, blatantly too, but and he felt he was the way I've seen what he's said, that he felt they loved him. He was a respected member of the Osage community too, or certain parts of the Osage community. Whether he actually really believed that, I don't know, but it seems like he said he did. And as I say, he learned, he did know the language, and it's look. The older I get, the more I see people that you just don't know. They do things that you can't comprehend. all I know is I go from A to B to C to D as the character. Don't overdo it. Don't telegraph anything. Don't say I'm a bad guy or this and that. In fact, I'm a nice person, and part of the community, and everything's okay. Nothing wrong, That's it.
And that's how you played him, as a nice guy.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I mean, there were Osages that went to Hale's funeral. He wrote them when he was in prison. You saw the letters. Some people shared personal family ones that aren't necessarily easy to find, that Hale would write them. How are you, my friend? How's your uncle doing? I miss you. My new best friend, I'm incarcerated now. I did not do this. My new best friend is a Sioux Indian. He's in here too. And just like, this man just...
And when we got to go to the museum, I mean, Hale was literally torn out of these. They had these sort of massive panoramic photos that they did back then in the 1920s, and he'd just be torn off the end. He was in most of them, but they tore. I mean, it was literally like watching the scarring that he'd left on that community still 100 years later, and that was what was so, moving and saddening is that within the Osage community, this wasn't talked about so much because of how horrific it was and how generational it was. And we got to meet and be with direct descendants and relatives of the victims. I got to go. We were there 100 years after the beginning of the Osage Reign of Terror, the first murder of Anna, and 100 years later after, the Tulsa Massacre and what was it called? Not the Flower Moon, but you called it the
It was the Flower Moon, but it was also a supermoon, which hadn't happened in that combination
a century later.
Since that day. We shot the night that, Scott Shepard and Kara Jade Myers are shooting the scene where she's getting into the car and he's taking her to Whiz Bang. The night Anna Brown was murdered was shot 100 years to the day of when it actually happened.
That is amazing.
It was chilling, actually.
And what was it like working with the Osage, and when you came to them and approached them about this? Was there convincing? I mean, what did they kind of bring to you that really helped open up the story for you?
This is, I think, a very important detail, and it also mirrors the film. You see that scene where Yancey Redcorn playing Bonacastle and Everett Waller playing Red Eagle say, "Are you here because of whatever, or is it because we paid you $20,000 to be here and do your job?" That was a crucial element that removes the whole white saviorism thing. And also with this film, Grey Horse extended an invitation to Marty and the filmmakers first to come to Fairfax. They were going to put food on the table and just to sit and visit with the community, because they had caught that the rights had been purchased. They knew the movement. They knew that it was going to happen. They knew, they were following it. Pretty much since the book came out, they were following it. So yeah, it was Osage who reached out to Marty, and Marty accepted. There are a lot of people that wouldn't have. That would have had possessive, feelings about the narrative they wanted to tell, and I know that Leo was definitely encouraging him to go do that too, and he went, and he ate the food. He loves squash. That was Marty's favorite. Community watches all those little things, and they remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think that, it was our job to listen, and it was Marty's job to listen, because as brilliant as David Grand's book was, and it was incredibly detailed, it didn't specifically have the Osage perspective, and there were so many different elements from the elders about the specificity of how hard it was to get the FBI to come and do this job. And then, of course, bringing this great actress to my left over here as a partner in the process. She added on so much detail and soul to Molly, but really shaped the narrative more from an Osage perspective. And, you begin to understand that she's really the heroine of the story. She went single-handedly to Washington, brought the funds personally asked the president. It took years and years and years for the FBI to come tackle this case, you know? So, yeah, more than anything, it was our job to hear the Osage perspective on this story because it was so intrinsic to their culture and has affected them so much.
You know, multiple collaborations with Martin Scorsese between yourself and Bob. I'd be curious from the both of you, what is something new from this experience that you learned about your collaboration that maybe you never saw before, but it came out working on Killers?
You want to go first, Bob?
Up to you.
Up to you.
All right, well, I'll go first.
All right.
No, Leo and I go back a long time, and he joked that this is just an extension of a movie we did over 30 years ago, This Boy's Life.
Yeah.
But it was great because Leo has done 6 movies. This is the 6th. This is the 10th. We've had a lot of experience, all of us together with him. We know each other. It was a very, very nice way to work, terrific, and a real pleasure. I just got to say, it's the way they always should be made for me. It was perfect, actually. I have a thing, and I was talking to Leo the other night about a little bit. I talked to Marty. We've talked about this subject for years, decades. And maybe we'll do that movie. I don't know if that'll happen, but it might. You never know if we can stay around long enough. Anyway, but that's it. It was great. So I learned. My point is that the older I get, the more I see things, and with us and this particular project, I thought, yeah, it'd be great if we could get it right. But who knows? You know, Marty's got other things, and we talk, but we'll see. Who knows? That's it.
Yeah. 6 collaborations. What's something new that unlocked in you for working on that?
Well, I have a tendency to get very sentimental when I talk about this relationship and the relationship with Marty because my career wouldn't have happened without this man right here. He, kind of single-handedly chose me for my first starring role and then took it upon himself to recommend me and say, hey, there's this kid you should work with. I just worked with him, and I got to work with Marty a multitude of times. But they've both been like cinematic father figures to me. The whole generation of young actors that I grew up with, this was the duo that you spoke about, the sort of American treasures of an actor-director relationship that we all aspired to. So to have this 30-year circle of then, and he says I joke about it, but it's true. It was kind of like my character in This Boy's Life, who was an abused stepson growing up 30 years later. It felt so natural to come back into those shoes and just become that character. But what was amazing as the work started to progress was to watch the relationship between, Bob and Marty and how they worked together. Because I know how I've worked with Marty over the years, and we flesh things out. We talk about things at great length, but they have this almost telepathic communication that's just nods and looks, and then things just start to shift and a scene changes. And that's intrinsic only to a relationship that could have, happened. When did you guys meet each other? How old are you guys?
Well, we were kids. We didn't know each other really. We'd see each other in the street and stuff like that. We had a mutual friend go back and forth, but we started reconnecting actually connecting, I guess, when I was about 27. And then talked about Mean Streets. At that time it was called Season of the Witch. And he said, we talked, that we had at a friend's Christmas party. And then he said, I don't know if he brought it up then. I was telling him I saw Who's That Knocking with Harvey Keitel. I said it was great, and he knows that world and how good it was and how specific it was and special. Anyway, and then this other project came later. He started talking about that, and that's how it started with us, again.
Lily, I began with you. I want to end with you. You're sitting between these two legends here, talking about history, talking about cinematic greats. What's something new you learned from each of them about yourself as a performer?
I mean, I cut my teeth in theater and built a career from independent film and being the new kid on set. I think a lot of people in my position, and a lot of times the first time you're on set, you're like terrified that you're gonna not be prepared enough. And the theater training of like, okay, this is the scene, we're gonna play it out from beginning to end and like go with all of the little things that rise up. I think that lent itself well to a handful of the things we were doing. But then watching how these two in the moment will just pull it out of themselves and like, if it didn't go the way they wanted, no shame, no fear about just like stopping, rewinding, and then starting again. And then it's like, okay, that's okay. It's like maybe the first little run through was the actor's discovery, and I need to go back and tweak that a little bit. And it was so cool to watch that in person. There was not a minute lost watching Bob work. It was just, he's surgical. He goes in, camera stays on him, and it doesn't stop until he's done. And he knows what's going to work. He knows what Marty wants. He knows what he wants. So that was incredible to watch him. It was like, okay, I don't have to look like I've been in rehearsal for 3 months walking on set doing this. We can find the truth of it very, very much in the moment, and it's film. It's something that can take a different approach. And then Leo, I just, it's something I want to do the next time that I work. In between every take, he would like run back to the monitor and watch what he'd just done, and like, he was doing the same thing. Like you watch Bob do it all from like, start rolling and then keep rolling until he's got it, and then he's like, feel like you need another one? No. And then Leo is, go do one, watch it. Okay, I want to fix this, I want to fix this. Marty said this, and he's very vocal about it while he's doing it, and then we just keep doing it, And so it was nice. It was very, these two who came up in film, watching how that process organically has formed into the greats of the medium, Yeah, it was cool.
Well, and I mean, talking about things that are incredible to watch, I just want to congratulate the three of you because it was incredible to watch all of your performances in this film. Ladies and gentlemen, the film is Killers of the Flower Moon. If it means something to you, if you enjoyed it, please tell your friends and family. I'm going to ask everybody to just stay in your seats for a minute if you can, because we have to go somewhere right away. But before we do, please put your hands together. Leonardo DiCaprio, Lily Gladstone, Robert De Niro. Thank you so much.